Before we begin, just when Mass started, I noticed that there are no ushers tonight. So if we can get a couple people when it comes time for the collection, if they can volunteer. Okay? The baskets are basically in the back here. All right? There's 2 collections tonight. 2. All right? I appreciate your help. There was a pastor in the diocese who was in a small parish out in the middle of nowhere. And in the early 90s, the diocese went through what is called a reorganization. They looked at where people lived, how many people lived in those communities, how many churches there were, and they decided, okay, let's look at the resources that we have and the distribution of priests. There may be some communities with 3 parishes and they only need 1. So that's, when they started to combine some of the parishes. This pastor, though, was out in the middle of nowhere. He was not going to be touched whatsoever. He knew it, the community knew it, everybody knew it. But he was mandated by the diocese to have a town hall meeting on how to work through this reorganization. He wanted to be left alone. He didn't want to have his town meeting because he knew that there would be quote-unquote troublemakers who would come to the meeting to complain. But he was mandated because, the bishop at the time decided, you're going to have it this night. We want to know the results. So he went down, and sure enough, there were troublemakers there. One lady got up, "Father, I have something to say to you." "Stop. Wait a minute. What's your name?" "Jane Doe." "Jane Doe, I don't see you on our rolls. Are you a parishioner here?" "I've been going to church here 10 years. Are you a parishioner here?" "You're not registered. Sit down." "But I have something to say." "You're not a parishioner. You have no rights. Sit down." Her crony, right next to her, I'll show him. She stands up. "What's your name?" Josephine Schmo. I couldn't call her Joe. "Josephine, are you a parishioner?" "Yes. Yes, I see you on the rolls. Go ahead." And she starts to complain. 2 minutes later, he said, "Okay, you're done. Stop." "But I'm not finished yet. I'm looking at how much you give, and that's how much your time is allotted. Sit down." "Anybody else have anything to say?" "No." "Okay, we're done." Now, that really happened, by the way. There are 2 things wrong, so to speak, in what happened. One was with the parishioners, or the non-parishioners, who were using that meeting to vent their personal grudges. They were not necessarily there to help the parish or the community. They were there for themselves. The other thing that was wrong was the pastor, who would not even listen to any concerns that people in the community had. So on one level, they were both wrong. They were both wrong. Now, what does this have to do with us? Okay. We call ourselves Christian. And those beliefs carry with them a certain expectation of how to act. Now, if you're thinking at this point, okay, what's he going to blame us on now? Don't worry. I'm not blaming you on anything. We're supposed to act a certain way. But yet, at times, our personal wants, our personal desires go before what we're supposed to do. So we're supposed to love neighbor, but yet we get very angry when somebody cuts us off. People ask us for a time to help in one way, shape, or form. I'm too busy. No, I don't want to do that. In the readings today, we have two women who remind us of our duty, so to speak. The first woman is a widow. She doesn't have any money. She doesn't have any food. There was a famine at the time. She wasn't married because if she's a widow, her husband's dead. Her son was probably too young to support the household. It was a famine, drought, nobody was being helpful, so she was on her own. Here comes Elijah, a stranger, from another country even, and what does she do? She abides by the rules of hospitality. She could have said, Elijah, would you get me something to drink and some food? She could have said, hit the road, Jack. I have no obligation to you. You're not even from my country. I don't know who you are. Get out of here. I'm too poor. But yet, her faith, even though it was not Jewish, where Zarephath belonged to the god Baal, she lived according to the rules of hospitality. And she invited him in, and she made some food for him. And God blessed her. The second reading in the gospel, we have another widow who's found in the temple area. And she gives a couple of pennies. Now, with all the money that everybody else was giving, she could have said, I'm too poor. Let somebody else take the burden. There are more rich people than I. I can't give. But yet she does. And she's pointed out by Jesus as being more holy than those who have money. The whole story of these two instances is to remind us of what our relationship with God is supposed to be about. Many of us take God for granted. Whether it's you in the congregation or me at the pulpit. We all at times can take God for granted, and we can be very selfish. I can't go to church because I have a basketball game. That's more important. I can't give. We're too strapped for change. Oh, I'm too busy. I got things to do at home. I can't volunteer. Oh, I can't visit, a home after baptism. I'm too tired. I got to rest. All of us very easily can make excuses. But if we truly believe in God, there are aspects of obligations that we all need to do. We're told every once in a while, count your blessings.